Respected teachers, friends, colleagues, I'll be talking on the initial assessment and management of the facial trauma patient. By the first look of it, the topic looks extremely boring. It looks the airway, breathing, circulation kind of topic, but I'll try to make it interesting. So we get to see a variety of facial trauma patients, either because of assault or road traffic accidents or animal bites and stuff. So why this matters? This matters because facial trauma is very common and challenging. As plastic surgeons, we have multiple responsibilities to save and stabilize the patient, to restore the pre-injury appearance, to restore the function, and what is often neglected is to minimize the period of disability. Early accurate assessment is critical for survival as well as outcomes. So we will be discussing about just that. So the primary assessment of a facial trauma patient is mainly life support aligned. We look for the airway, breathing and circulation with associated injuries, and finally disability and exposure with a full assessment of the patient. So airway assessment is always the highest priority. Now let us take an example. If a patient like this come to us, what do we actually look for? We actually look for broken teeth, which is seen over here. There can be a lot of oral secretions, clots in the oral cavity, for which serothaction must be considered. There might be tongue fall if the mandible is retruded posteriorly. In this case, there is maxilla which is fractured and it is probably pushing over the posterior pharyngeal wall and probably causing to respiratory obstruction. Then there is nasal blockage over here. You can see that there are clots in the nasal cavity, which needs a clear and gentle suction of the oral as well as the nasal cavities. Now positioning of the patient is often neglected or underutilized thing. Sitting or semi-prone position or even lateral position helps significantly to prevent airway obstruction. Tracheostomy should always be considered when there is impending respiratory obstruction and whenever jaw traction, chin lift, oropharyngeal airway and tongue stitch doesn't work. In those cases, tracheostomy should always be considered. Now there is a saying that if you cannot hear the respiration, the airway is clear or the patient is dead. So hearing should be our key assessment. If we are able to hear the breathing, then there is some obstruction somewhere or the other and that should be assessed and addressed accordingly. The next important thing is breathing and circulation assessment. Now in severe injuries, severe facial trauma like these, major facial bleeding must be controlled either by direct pressure or by ligation and cauterization. Now in case there is excessive nasal hemorrhage, nasal packing should be considered or Foley's catheters can be inserted intranasally, inflated, pulled forwarded, giving pressure over the posterior nasal wall and tied over the columella to achieve hemostasis. Now as a general rule, if the systolic blood pressure is less than 100, 1 liter blood volume has been lost. And as a general rule, if the systolic BP is more than 100 and the pulse rate is less than 100, then the circulation is not seriously compromised. So this should also be taken into consideration during the general assessment of the patient. Thorough systemic assessment of the patient must be considered. All the areas like chest wall injuries, abdominal injuries, head injuries must be considered, looked for and managed with respective specialties. Specific care must be taken to address the cervical spine injuries because cervical spine injuries are commonly associated with facial trauma and are commonly missed. So it is extremely important that we assess and address the cervical spine injuries. Now let us move on to the focused examination of the face. It should be done in an orderly fashion, either go from superior to inferior or go from inferior to superior. The periorbital, the masticatory and the neurosensory systems must be addressed. In inspection, facial asymmetry should be addressed, double vision should be looked for, loss of vision should be looked for, pupillary reflexes and extraocular movements of the eye should be looked for. So we start our palpation from the superior orbital rim. We look for the superior orbital rim. Then we go towards the inferior orbital rim. Malar eminences are palpated on both sides. Zygomatic arch region is palpated. Border of the mandible is palpated. Entire border of the mandible is palpated. Little finger is inserted in the ear and mandibular movements are assessed. Bone is looked for mobility. The head is fixed and nasal bone is moved sidewise. The maxilla is moved in an antero-posterior dimension, that too after fixing the head. So what are we looking for in the entire assessment of the face? We are looking for crepitus. We are looking for any step deformity if there over the infraorbital region, supraorbital region, or over the body of the mandible. We are looking for occlusal problems if any, and we are looking for numbness, especially in the infraorbital region where nerves might be involved. Coming to focused assessment of the eye, what do we look for? We look for visual acuity, we look for extraocular movement functions, we look for anophthalmos, we look for double vision, we look for intraocular pressure, and we look for pupillary reaction. Whenever pupillary reaction is compromised, it is highly suggestive of optic nerve damage. Now it is very important that visual loss and diplopia must be documented preoperatively, because operating on a single good eye is extremely risky, and in case there are any problems, we'll end up in a soup. Consider some clinical scenarios. In injuries like this is a beer mauling injury. Medial canthal tendon avulsion is commonly seen, and it is also associated with the NOE fracture complex. So this is almost always present. There is traumatic telecanthus, and epistaxis must be assessed and addressed. So in injuries like this, we can see there is periorbital edema, there is ecchymosis, and over here you can also see subconjunctival hemorrhage. So these findings are typically suggestive of a fracture of the orbit. Fracture of the anterior orbit is suggested by a palpable step deformity over here. Then there can be sensory nerve disturbances over the infraorbital region. Fracture of the middle orbit may lead to changes in the position of the globe, as is probably seen over here. There might be diplopia. Fracture of the posterior orbit may present with visual disturbances and oculomotor disturbances. Now in this particular patient, note the position of the subconjunctival hemorrhage. Now when subconjunctival hemorrhage is present on the lateral side, it is suggestive of fracture of the zygomatic maxillary complex or the lateral orbital wall. But if we have a subconjunctival hemorrhage on the medial side, then it is more likely to be suggestive of nasal fracture and naso-orbito-ethmoidal complex. Now also note the slant over here, the slant of the eye over here. Now this slant is also typical of fracture zygoma. This is caused by the inferior as well as posterior displacement of the fracture zygoma, which causes the inferior displacement of the lateral canthal ligament over here, and this gives to the antimongoloid slant of the eye. Now in patients presenting like this, there is obvious visible fracture of the frontal sinus. Part of the frontal sinus wall is gone. There is fracture of the NOE complex, as well as the nasal bone is also lost. Now in such type of patients, anterior cranial fossa injuries must be suspected. CSF rhinorrhea must be anticipated and must be addressed, and soft tissue cover must be provided at the earliest to avoid secondary infections and secondary problems. In patients presenting like this, in injuries presenting like this, there is nothing left to imagination. All fractures are clearly seen. Although definitive fixation might not be possible unless the patient is stabilized, local thorough wash and debridement must be considered. Suturing must be considered at the earliest to avoid secondary infections, and bony fixation can be considered once the patient is stabilized. This is a sharp cut injuries. Patient presenting like this, you can see that there is a palatal split over here, maxilla is split over here, part of the mandible is also lost. There is a clear incision over the zygoma, zygomatic arch is fractured, and facial nerve is injured. So in these type of patients, all attempts must be made to identify and repair the facial nerve at the primary surgery. More commonly in clear-cut clean injuries, it is very likely that we find the nerves near the wound edges. They should be identified and must be coapted. Be it open or closed injuries of the nose, intranasal assessment of the nose should always be considered to assess septal hematoma, because if left undiagnosed and untreated, it can cause obstruction of the nasal airway and can lead to septal perforations. Fractures of the middle third of the face typically cause lengthening of the middle third of the face. So fractures of the maxilla cause this, and in this case this is also a typical case of the NOE complex. Is telecanthus with a saddle nose deformity. In these type of injuries, the frontal processes of maxilla on both sides are almost always fractured, because what happens is that the medial canthal tendon are inserted on the frontal process of the maxilla, and because of the fracture it leads to telecanthus and increase in the distance between them. This is a typical case of zygomatico-maxillary complex injury. Subconjunctival hemorrhage is almost always pathognomic. Facial width and malar prominence must be assessed. Malar projection must be assessed. Unilateral epistaxis can be due to tearing or shearing of the ipsilateral maxillary sinus mucosa. In these type of patients, trismus is almost always present. Mouth opening is compromised. This can be either because of pain or edema or impingement of the coronoid processes. Now coming to fracture of the mandible. In mandibular fractures, what do we have to look for? We have to look for changes in the occlusion. We have to look for deviation in the chin. We have to look for mouth opening, limited mouth opening and limited excursion of the mandibular movements. There is palpable step over here in the occlusion. There can be crepitus. Palpation of the fracture line can be seen, and intraorally there is always ecchymosis in the floor of mouth, among other things. Now because of the nature of the anatomy, mandible is fractured at multiple sites commonly. Now associated condyle injuries are common. If we see the mode of injury in this particular patient, there can be associated condyle fracture on this side, which can lead to premature posterior contact on the ipsilateral side of the condyle injury and can lead to open bite on the contralateral side. Another similar case, you can see that chin is deviated towards the side of the condylar fracture. So in this case, if the condyle is fractured on this side, there is premature contact over here and it results in open bite on the opposite side. Now in impact like this over here, there can be bilateral condylar fractures, and which leads to premature posterior contact and can lead to open bite, anterior open bite. What happens, how the injury happens and the mechanism is seen in the adjoining image. A similar type of injury showing the mechanism of action, it is showing the telescoping over here. The telescoping over here leads to posterior early contact and anterior open bite over here. Now just to sum up the initial assessment of the facial trauma patient, conditions like respiratory compromise, pneumothorax, massive bleeding, intracranial bleed need treatment now. Large open wounds, open limb, pelvic fractures, treatable ischemia of the bowel require treatment soon. And all other conditions, mainly the conditions which we deal with, fractures, can wait for several hours and days without spoiling the chances of managing them successfully. Just a few quick take-home messages. Airway should be always addressed first. Accurate clinical assessment and imaging is the key. Stabilize first, restore form and function next. Call for action. Very often we see residents who directly see the CT scans, MRIs without seeing the patient. So I request all the residents to make a clinical diagnosis first and then look at the imaging to see what you have missed for, because eventually we treat the patient and not the X-rays or the CT scans. Thank you.